Hello class. In this presentation, I will discuss morality and its distinction from other normative systems. In the previous video lecture, I discussed what make moral standards different from other standards or norms. Now we will look into how in particular morality is different from etiquette, law, and religion, which are often identified with and confused with morality since these are also institutions that lay down certain norms that serve as our basis in determining what we ought to do and not do. First, let us focus on morality and etiquette. Etiquette refers to the set of rules or customs that determine the accepted behaviors in a particular social group. Following these rules makes us show respect and courtesy to others. In eating out, for example, one should wait until all the people on the table have been served before he or she starts eating. Of course, now there are various ways in our social life where our courtesy to others is expected. Aside from dining, we have etiquette at certain occasions, such as baptism and funeral, riding public transportation, and even in communicating. Thus, we need to also observe certain rules in the more modern ways of communicating, such as sending emails, posting in social media. But these so-called rules of etiquette vary from one culture to another. That is, what may be unexpected behavior in one culture may not be in another. Etiquette is different from morality in that the former is concerned with form and style, while the latter with right conduct. Etiquette is also more arbitrary and culture-based than morality. To get the people's approval of our action or to be thought of well by people, we try to observe common rules of etiquette. Now, violating the rules can lead society to consider you ill-mannered, impolite, or even uncivilized, but not necessarily immoral. Making loud slurping sound when taking noodles or not closing your mouth as you chew your food may result to being called impolite or being perceived as lacking in manner, but they are not basis for claiming that one is acting immorally. So in the same way, it does not necessarily mean that following what etiquette demands is acting morally. William Shaw, in his book Personal and Social Ethics, pointed out that scrupulous observance of rules of etiquette can camouflage moral issues. Um, so before the laws against racial discrimination were enacted in America, it was thought uh, bad manners for blacks and whites to eat together or to sit side by side in a bus. But for one who believed that such rule of etiquette is rooted in racial discrimination and human degradation, promoting or simply conforming to such rule does not amount to doing the moral thing to do. So such was the point shown by a 42-year-old black woman named Rosa Parks when she was asked to give up her seat for a white man and she refused. Though she may not comply with the social expectation, she stood her ground knowing that she has not done anything immoral, but rather doing the morally right thing to do as she fought for equality and fairness. Though morality and etiquette are different from each other, in a way there is a relationship between the two, for disregarding or scorning etiquette can be considered immoral in certain circumstances. Mm, So there can be different ways of greeting a person among various cultures. In Japan, people greet each other with a bow, and their bows are different in angle and duration depending on the person they are greeting. In Oman, no, men greet each other by pressing their noses together. In Thailand, people greet each other by pressing their hands together in a prayer fashion and slightly bowing their heads. But as pointed out no, by Louis Podgman in his book Ethics Discovering Right and Wrong, once the custom is adopted, the practice takes on the importance of a moral rule, subsumed under the wider principle of showing respect to people. So in Islamic societies, women are expected to wear hijab, which covers their entire body except their face and hands. Such way of dressing protects women's dignity and promotes modesty. Although there is nothing immoral for a non-Muslim woman to wear shorts or sleeveless blouse, appearing in such an outfit in a Muslim community may be may well be so offensive that we can consider it morally insensitive or scandalous. So now let's go to morality and law. How are they different and are they related in some way? So, like etiquette, law also regulates human conduct, thus, it is often confused with morality. We ought not to exploit the weak, or not to deceive another person, or not to take what is not ours, because these acts are both morally and legally wrong. The moral imperative not to kill a person coincides with the legal imperative not to commit murder or homicide. Law and morality, however, are different. Breaking the law is not always an immoral act, just as following the law is not necessarily doing what is morally right. Mm, Let us take as an example, no, to illustrate this. Suppose your mother suffered a heart attack and she needed to be brought to the hospital immediately. You took her in your car and rushed her to the hospital, driving at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. Although you are prohibited by law to drive at more than 60 kilometers per hour on that road, it does not seem morally right for you to follow the law and drive at that speed limit knowing that doing so will jeopardize the life of your mother. So driving the car at that speed may break the law but is morally right rather than wrong. So there we see no, that what is illegal is not necessarily immoral. It can also be said that what is illegal is not necessarily moral or good. For instance, no, when Janet Napoles, the alleged mastermind behind the Priority Development Assistance Fund or PDAF scams, uh, repeatedly invoked the right to self-discrimination, thus evading the questions and being mum on what she knew about the politicians who were involved in corruption, it may be legal to remain silent rather than to tell the truth, but such act jeopardizes truth and justice, and thus is morally questionable. Or it may be legal in a particular country for a woman to have an abortion, but the question whether it is morally right to commit an abortion remains an issue. Thus, even in that country, some of its citizens may stage a protest or demonstration urging the state to respect the right to life of the unborn. In those cases, it is clear that certain actions may be in accordance to the law but not morally right. But though morality and law differ, uh, does one affect another? Should laws be based on morality? I have mentioned before a famous line uttered by Martin Luther King Jr. that one has a moral responsibility to disobey an unjust law. So in effect, he was saying that laws should have moral basis. But should laws be based on morality? How do laws become valid? What makes a law a law? There are two schools of thought on this issue: the positivist legal theory and the natural law theory. According to the positivist legal theory, a law becomes valid when they are enacted by the legitimate authority following the established, prescribed procedures in enacting laws. So, to determine the validity of the law lies on who promulgated or created this law and how. If it was legislated or decreed by the legitimate authority following correct procedures, the law is valid, and we should follow and conform to it. It implies that there is no necessary connection between law and morality. A law is a law not because it conforms to certain moral standards. The existence and content of a law does not depend on whether it is good or evil, on whether it conforms to the ideals of justice, of fairness, or humanity. So it is not a question whether a particular law is good or evil, just or unjust, but the question is whether the law is valid or invalid. So for the positivist perspective, the law is a social construction. It is not an expression of some higher moral order or principle. It is rather an expression of the will of the official, no? The legitimate authority. But what is the rationale behind this positivist position? So laws to efficiently direct and regulate human actions and behaviors should be as clear and descriptive and empirically demonstrable as possible. So if subjective ideas, issues come into the picture, it will be problematic. As we know, no, there are several views on morals and ethics. So the law must be free from these nuances to prevent chaos. What the law requires from the people must be clearly and explicitly defined. If the boundaries are clear, confusions will be avoided, which ensures efficient functioning of the legal system. Thus, no, it is imperative that morality be removed from legal disputes. So this is the point, no, of Alan Collison. Chemistry and alchemy used to be indistinguishable, they say. But when science became more rigorously empirical, the science of chemistry emerged with the unruly subject of alchemy defined out. A descriptive theory succeeds in part by excluding material from its province that's problematic and unessential in advancing the descriptive purpose. So, yes, no? Does morality always stay the same? Does it have universal validity? Moral beliefs and judgments vary from people to people. There are so much disagreements on what is right and wrong. So when we place morality in the equation of lawmaking, we are we are actually allowing the government to impose its own morality to us. Now, how does the natural law theory differ from legal positivism? The natural law theory recognizes that law and morality are deeply connected. For them, no, laws must depend on underlying moral standards. So for this theory, the primary function of the law is to serve the common good of humanity. So any law which conflicts with the very purpose of the law is not a law at all, and we are not bound to obey or follow it. It is against legal positivism because it believes that the basis of the creation and obedience to the law does not merely lie on the mandate of any legitimate authority which enacted that law. And history has shown, no, how members of society can be unjustly discriminated or disadvantaged by laws that only serve the interest of those in power. Laws may be promulgated by legislators to protect their vested interests and thus may not really be beneficial to most people. Uh, One may wonder why in the Philippines the anti-dynasty bill, which aims to remove the concentration of political power within a particular clan, has been proposed in the Congress several times already but has not gotten the nod of the legislators. It can be surmised that enacting such law will be detrimental to the interests of those political personalities in the Congress. So the assumption of the natural law theory is that there is already a higher order or principle or law that is out there. So it is a natural thing that we can discover through our reason. Such law that grounds human moral values must be the basis of any codified or written law that we are to follow. For example, respect for fundamental human rights. As rational beings, we assume, we acknowledge that the moral imperative to recognize and respect the fundamental right of every human being to live a life with dignity. So this is part of our nature as human beings. The human inclination toward justice is also another natural state of affairs. We are innately directed toward pursuing and promoting justice, fairness, giving to others what is due them, and written laws should be based and should conform to these moral principles emanating from the natural law. So an unjust law is not a law at all. Laws that degrade human dignity is not law at all. So although laws are different from morality, for the natural law theory, laws must depend on and conform to moral principles and standards. So let us now go to morality and religion. Despite their difference, morality is often identified with religion. In various societies around the world, religion has so much influence the moral life of the people so as to be seen as indistinguishable from morality. A Christian taking care of the sick, mindful of Christ's commandment of love. A Jew preparing and consuming food based on the law of kosher, or a Muslim giving alms to the needy according to the fourth pillar of Islam. These moral practices of most of humanity throughout the ages are testaments to how morality has become identified with conformity to God's command. Indeed, religion, like law, is related to morality. But unlike law, which is often based on morality, religion is generally perceived to be the basis of morality. People tend to think that what is right can be derived from religious beliefs and teachings. This thinking is anchored on the idea that God is the source of goodness, and thus living a moral life is achieved by adhering to God's will, and acting immorally is basically disobeying God. But should morality be founded on religion? This question first arises in Plato's dialogue, the Euthyphro. Here, Socrates now asks the pious Euthyphro this question: do the gods love goodness because it is good, or is it good because the gods love it? Following the point of question raised by Socrates, we want to know whether God commands what is good because it is good, or whether the good is good because God commands it. So for religious believers, morality must be founded on religion. So if there are moral laws, there must exist a lawmaker. And such lawmaker must not be fallible like humans. Such being, who is the ultimate basis of morality, must be a supreme being whom we call God, the locus and focus of religion. And it is not difficult to understand why a religious believer who recognizes God as the origin of his or her existence would equate what is good with what God wills. If we are created by God, the meaning and purpose of our existence emanate from Him. Thus, to lead a good life, one simply ought to direct one's thoughts and actions according to God's design. The key to a morally upright existence is aligning one's life to the will of the Creator. And for some thinkers, there is no real conflict between God's commands and genuine morality, because whatever God commands is what is right simply because God commands it. A corollary, of this is the idea that if God does not exist, then neither does morality exist. This is the point of Dostoevsky's character, Ivan Karamazov, in the novel Karamazov Brothers, when he asserted that if God does not exist, everything is permissible. Nothing is forbidden or required. Without God, we have moral nihilism. If there is no God, then nothing is ethically wrong, required, or permitted. Those who see religion as essential in morality anchors their argument on the premise that God's existence ensures that ultimate justice exists. Morality must have a force for its laws to be followed. So, uh, unlike legal laws which the government enforces so that those who violate them will face a corresponding punishment, moral laws do not have its own authority that will reward or punish people for their moral actions. It is for this reason that some people question the foundation of morality. If you can get what you want by acting immorally, why be good? And in our society, there are those who are able to profit, become wealthy and powerful, and lead a comfortable life through immoral acts such as cheating, lying, manipulating others, and so on. If there is no life after death, then those people who violated the moral laws have gotten away with their immoral deeds. As such, there is no sense in being a moral person if those who enjoy comfort and pleasure through immoral means do not get punished, and those who remain faithful to the moral law are the ones who suffer. But if God exists, then the good will eventually prevail over evil. So if God exists, the scales are perfectly balanced so that all people will eventually get what they deserve according to their moral merit. The just will be duly rewarded and the unjust will be duly punished. The idea that what a person sows is that which he will reap is not just emphasized in Christianity, but also in Judaism, Islam, and other world religions. In Hinduism, it is carried out with a rigorous logic of karma. That is, your present condition in life is caused by what you did in your previous life. And what you do with your present life will determine what kind of life you will lead in the next life. So the very idea of the existence of a perfectly just God and an immortal soul provides the motivation to be moral. The fear of eternal damnation and the yearning for an eternal life of bliss and happiness, both of which presuppose a religion containing beliefs about personal immortality and a God who is a perfect judge, are a powerful motivating force to lead a morally good life. In addition to these factors, we should note that religion provides practices and structures that support its values. There is usually a church of some kind and a community of faithful who provide mutual support to one another. A godless ethics lacks a comparable support structure. Even religions that lack a belief in personal immortality can provide such communal support. So this is the basis why some would believe that morality eventually should be anchored in religion.